what's up, everyone? Welcome to episode 23 of Zipline, the official Super Interactive podcast. I'm Chris Roper.
I'm Jeremy Dunham, and today we are joined by two guests. We have both David Johnson and Chris Oje, software engineers.
Howdy do.
Hello.
Hey, guys. Thank you for coming on the show. I know we've had both of you have been talking to you about coming on the show for a long time, so I'm glad that you've shown up.
It's about time.
Anytime.
Right.
Before we get to you guys, though, let's go over the news for the week in the ZCap.
Well, first up, obviously, the big news is that Mag 2.01 came out. It wasn't the largest patch in the world, but it was still an important patch because a lot of its focus was on making the game more stable than it was before. Because, you know, there were some crashing issues for folks, and that we have improved that. It's still not 100% perfect.
Yeah,
but
the one coming up next should improve the last couple ones, but the major problem that was in there has been fixed with 201.
Yes.
In further Mag news, we get a lot of people asking us when we're going to talk about escalation, because that was part of the beta. A lot of people have already had a chance to try it. 2.0 has been out for, I don't know, in a few weeks now at least. Yeah. And they're wondering when escalation is going to come out. We will be telling you that pretty soon. Maybe not within the next week, but pretty soon
next
thereafter.
Few weeks.
So, yeah. So stay tuned for news on escalation. It is coming very soon. Before next year, I'll promise you that one. And you will get details on that shortly.
We also want to do a nice quick shout out to Waggler and all the guys over there at iwaggle3d.com. They've put together some really awesome videos. I don't know if you guys have seen them or not, but they are really good. They basically put together videos on how the move works with various games.
Right.
And they did one on the Mag beta specifically, and they did another one, an update of what the Mag final retail version, how that worked with the move, and now they're actually doing a preview on SOCOM 4.
Right. And the thing that's really cool about it is, even if you're, I don't know, let's say you're a SOCOM fan and you're not too interested in the Mag stuff, but it's still awesome because they go through and they show you what different settings might do. Not that these will directly apply to SOCOM, perhaps, but they'll show you what different settings mean and how to adjust it. And if you're looking for a certain kind of movement, the kind of things you're looking for, and how the settings affect each other and things like that. It's a little more complicated than you might think that it is. But these guys do a really good job of walking you through and showing you how different things affect how the move works.
It's really specific, and they really break it down and show you the benefits of really trying to figure out what best works for you in terms of the control scheme. So definitely check it out. They're lengthy videos, but I think it's time well spent, especially if you're interested in using the move.
Right. With that, let's get to the discussion part of the show. Why don't each of you guys take a turn, and David, why don't you go here first, and tell us what you do on a daily basis. I know you're a tools engineer.
Yes.
By trade. What exactly does that mean? What do you do day to day?
He designs hammers.
Do you work with Handy Manny?
Huh?
Never mind. Go ahead.
Tools is one of those funny things. It's hard to describe exactly what we do as far as, we don't do weapons. We don't do cinema directly and whatnot. We do a lot of support behind the scenes. So the main thing that we're doing is helping everyone else work, faster, cheaper, and, pretty much more efficiently than, we would outside of things. So we have the level editor. We don't have, a level editor for Mag, as many of you guys know, but we have one in-house. And so that helps, everyone, who's working on a level to see, okay, how does the general level look? Can we just move things around and, try it again, see what happens? And so by doing that, we allow everyone to kind of get a good picture of how things are going to go so that we don't have to go through, 3 hours of iteration so that we just to see how things work in the end.
So I imagine a very interesting part of your job is a lot of programmers will get directions on something and they'll go back there and they'll sit and they'll work on it and then it'll come out and then the gun shoots or something. But in your case, you need to work, I would imagine, hand to hand with the artist. And they're going to be used to working with something like Maya, and so maybe do you ever sit down with some of their packages, see how that kind of stuff works, take it back, and come in from their end of looking at something creatively and trying to make it user friendly for their side?
Absolutely. I know we do use Maya here, and pretty much any time that we can make our level editor work like Maya, that's time for them because they can just use their muscle memory on keystrokes and just do the same thing. And we are working a lot with artists and designers. Actually, we work more with them than we do the rest of the engineering department because they're the primary customers of what we're doing, and they're the ones who are really, organizing everything into one final package. And we have to do a lot of user interface to make it really simple for them to use, but also give them a lot of creative power and creative liberty to do what they need to do.
So I'd say efficiency is essentially the goal that you have, is making the game more efficient, making the tools more efficient, making us more efficient as a development team.
Yes. And as a result of that, we kind of have to know the big overarching thing. We have to know a little bit about everything. So we have to know a little bit of how the game works, a little bit of how all the levels are put together, and kind of what they want to do with it so that we can kind of make their dream a reality.
Is there a specific accomplishment on MAG that you really take pride in knowing that you were a big part of?
I think probably the one thing that actually did make it to the game that you could probably know that it was my work is it's something that nobody would ever notice on their own, but if you look at all the power lines in the game, originally we went in and we would place, the artist would place power poles in the world, and then they would go through, load it into Maya, and then they'd string all the power lines together. But, eventually someone would move the power poles and they'd have to redo this whole process. And so one of the things we had to do was we had to make a little tool that just said, oh, well, string a power line from here to here, and then they can move it along with it. And then all of the power lines are generated procedurally. So we have, we pretty much make all the power lines ourselves, and we just kind of have, just do it here and do it once, and it'll just work forevermore. So all the power lines were something that I did.
So without you, objectives could not be taken because they'd be powerless.
True that. We thought you'd have to have underground power, at which point...
But then that ruins your whole story.
Yes.
So we'll go with the first part.
I like that one better.
Chris, how about you? You actually have a very similar title, but on the same token, what do you do and how does that differ from what David does?
Well, I'm actually making the game work. I kind of it's like a big puzzle to me. I take all the pieces and put it together. There's art and design and all these things, and then I just put it all together and make it work. So for example, like guns, animations, camera work, just anything like that. Anything that's really kind of the game experience. And it's a lot of fun for me because I can actually be somewhat creative, put my own flavor on how things are made.
And that's actually a pretty good thing because you play the game a lot in your spare time on top of making the game. You actually really enjoy the game. I think people who read the boards would probably recognize Chris from his rather active name there, which is Zipper White Tiger, where he appears quite often. I'm sure you've seen him, especially on the Issues and Exploits board, where he takes a very active role in listening to issues that people have and looking into the code to see what's creating them and lets people know whether or not we've actually already fixed them or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's been really valuable for me, just doing all the live updates, just because you really kind of get a feel for what's not working out and what needs attention. And like Jeremy said, I play all the time at home, and I identify a lot of things that bug me, and I'll just go fix it. It's awesome being able to do that.
What faction are you playing right now, or do you have it set up so you're playing all three?
Well, my White Tiger guy is Valor, but my main is on Raven. And how
many times have you veteraned?
Well, I hit level 60 pretty quickly and stayed there just so I could own people, and then I finally veteraned before 107 came out, just for a happy hour and everything. So I'm just one veteran. I probably won't vet again just because I like being high level. But I've got, 150 plus hours in, which for me is really rare for a game. Very rare. So it's amazing that I can work all day on MAG and then still be chomping at the bit for, my Friday night play sessions and stuff.
Yeah, I think that says a lot.
Yeah.
So as David was talking about, he works a lot with the artists. I imagine then you have to work a lot with the designers because you've got to be carrying on conversations about how guns feel and how movement acceleration works. And can you talk about how a day-to-day conversation might work with these guys?
Right. Yeah. I just go in. Like I go in Scott Rudy's office constantly, and we'll just bounce ideas off and just kind of BS about stuff, and then come up with a good plan. And I work really closely with design, and I really enjoy kind of being like a mini unofficial designer myself. Mm-hmm. So we just kind of have like a real good banter and just kind of come up with, we write lists as we talk about things that we want to fix. And like I've got like 5 pages in a notebook in my desk that are things that I want to do still.
Same question that I asked David for you. What's your favorite accomplishment that you've managed to implement in the game? The game being MAG.
Well, probably like right after we shipped, actually right before we shipped, there was just a lot of things that were bugging me. For example, when you plant a charge at a bunker, there was no way of knowing when it was going to blow, and you would just die. And then all your teammates that were guarding the bunker would get killed, and you would lose 100 XP. That was just unacceptable. So like I just went and fixed it. It was like, now there's a tone that tells you when it's going to blow up, and then you don't lose XP. And that was really rewarding for me because that was one of the biggest things that was annoying me. And it's just little things like that really there's no one big grand thing, because I honestly I came onto the project and we're kind of in wrapping up mode, so I didn't really own a lot of features before it shipped. So just all the DLC stuff I really was able to kind of sink my teeth into, and just a lot of little things.
We get a lot of questions about how to get into the games industry. People write us and say, I want to be an artist or I want to be a designer. Can you guys talk about probably the best way and maybe classes you want to take in college or whatever to get into the programming end of things? And I imagine a kind of interesting thing that if you guys can hit on this is a lot of people write us and say, I want to be a programmer. And then I respond to them and I say, what kind of programmer do you want to be? Do you want to be writing graphics routines? Do you want to be the physics guy? Do you want to do, gameplay stuff or whatever? Can you talk about, specializing in programming and kind of what sort of things you should be learning? And do you need to be specialized when you enter, or is it sort of, apply for positions, see what jobs are open, and then kind of fill in the gaps?
So I know for me, I pretty much went in with a general programmer's design in mind. I also majored in math because math was one of my first loves, but I also didn't want to teach for a living, so computer programming actually seemed a good choice for me as well. And so I focused really heavy on math. It got me working with the government, doing the Department of Defense work for a long time because they do a lot of mathy type of things. But, in general, the things that I wish I had taken, I wish I had a lot stronger emphasis in graphics, because graphics is one of those things. It's not obviously the intuitive thing to do, but it's, it's very useful. And there's actually a lot of math in there too. So you have to kind of like a little bit of math. I mean, you don't have to go crazy into, the differential equations or whatever crazy math stuff there is out there. But you do have to have a little love for math because you're going to be using it constantly. And I know there are people who absolutely hate it, and you're probably not going to enjoy it if you're doing that. As far as everything else is concerned, college, at least with the general degree that I have, there's a lot of classes out there that sort of build you up in general of like, oh, I could tackle any task that gets thrown at me. But game programming is sort of a very narrow focus. And so it's one of those, it's good to have that general focus. But a lot of the college classes I've taken haven't, or don't work directly to it. Although it's actually pretty interesting that you can kind of come up with interesting ideas that don't apply to something that you're doing and sort of, creative problem solving. And really, that's really what programming is. It's a lot of problem solving mixed with just, being able to speak the computer talk.
Right.
And that's actually one thing that I've noticed. One of the advantages is when I went to school, my major was computer programming also. And when I went, my first year was all math. It was just math classes, mm-hmm. with the very basic entry-level programming. And they're like, don't worry, we'll teach you everything else later. So you really have to have a passion for math. Then, nowadays, you can actually go to more specialized video game-specific schools, which is something back in the dark ages when I was going, when all of us were going to college, they didn't have. But I think that one thing you have to remember, as Chris said, is definitely go in with a goal so that you know exactly what you want to work on. But also, to David's point, make sure that you're also well-rounded, that you go in with that general programming approach, because then you can apply your skills to wherever they need you.
I think one thing that's kind of interesting about the programming aspect of game design as a whole is if you're an artist, I can go home and I can draw characters on a piece of paper. Or if I'm a designer, I could go get something like a really easy-to-use program like GameMaker or something. I can make a little Tetris clone. If you're a programmer and you say, I want to write a graphics engine, that could take you years, especially if you're and you won't have anything to show for it for a long period of time. So it's something you've got to stick with and kind of, and through your first few years of college, you're going to be doing stuff that you don't think that applies whatsoever. And eventually, and maybe you have to do it on your own, it'll all come together, but you're not going to get the instant gratification you're not going to get that you would get from other stuff like art or design or sound design or any of those kind of things. Chris, do you have any suggestions for people who are coming in? Because for me, I would say taking the classes is good, but you also need to do a lot of learning on your own, picking up books and learning about just theories and stuff, reading like white papers and stuff from NVIDIA cards and kind of looking at the experimental. If you can follow John Carmack's writings, I think that would probably be, something interesting to do in your spare time.
Right. Well,
if you have the decoder key.
Yeah.
They're really, there's a bunch of different kinds of programmers, not just a programmer. There's low-level programmers, high-level programming, there's, scripting, there's networking, there's so many different kinds. And if all these guys scared you that you have to be good at math, have no fear, because I suck at math and I hate it. And I'm still a programmer. But it absolutely does come up. I mean, I've had to relearn quaternions and matrix math and all this crap all the time. And it's rough, but hey, you can do it. And really to the point of just being different kind of programmers, like for me, I really enjoy the high level programming aspect, just like things you can see. I type a few characters on my keyboard and hit go, and then things happen. I saw it work. That's what I find rewarding, and that's what keeps me motivated. But there are lower level programmers, where it's like almost thankless because you do a lot of work and no one ever sees anything really. and David's nodding his head. I know he can relate. But really, it's just you do have to have a passion for it. When I went into college with some buddies, we all just went into programming. They all bounced out because they hated it, and they didn't want to. They couldn't make it work. But for me, I really enjoyed it, and you really just have to have a love for it because it's not for the faint of heart. Mm-hmm. But yes, you have to do your own personal projects, your own demos, things like that to really kind of keep your skills up and learn. And just start as a generalist. You can't specialize right away in most cases. You have to just kind of do everything and then find what sticks. And for me, that was, the gameplay programming. That's kind of where I specialize right now. It's a waste of my talent and skills, to put me on some database programming or, networking. I don't really know much about that stuff, so.
To steal one of Chris's lines, I think it's time for some questions from the fans.
Yeah.
Blackout Basement wants to know from both of you, what are the most common types of bugs or issues that you run into when making games, especially on MAG, the most recent game we've worked on? What are the types of things you see pop up most often that you normally have to address?
Well, I can tell you that you can count on memory leaks, crashes, problems with physics, problems with tuning. Every game will have those for sure. Getting stuck in geometry is, animation and networking and things like that are really hard to debug because you can't just step through the code and see what's going on because it's all timing based and stuff. In MAG, it's just things just rot, code rots. Like everything's done, works great, and then someone makes a change 5 months later, and then this other thing stopped working, and that just always happens.
I'll definitely say that crashes are probably the number one thing that's annoying because a crash happens and then all of a sudden an email goes out to all engineers. Okay, WTF, let's figure out, what's going on. And we have to spend almost, sometimes the worst ones are a day delay trying to figure out what actually happened. And the code rot's certainly there too, or at least, just interactions of systems, especially when it's kind of designed in what sounded like really good way at the first time, and then like you didn't realize the perfect implications in the long run. I know for MAG we had, because there was so many characters, we had pretty much specialized network code for it, and to do this we had to keep players in this box so that because we did a lot of bit packing, you had to keep them within a space that we knew where we would have good precision on that. And so for the tools, we decided, because we've moved the characters outside the box, we'll just move the world. And that sounded really great at first, except then we get the SOCOM 4 and you get the cinematics and they're put at exact positions. And when someone moves the world, suddenly everything's at the wrong spot. And so you have a lot of really weird things of, you have to go and figure out why something is going on, which you try to prevent that as much as you can, but sometimes you never know exactly how your code is going to get used.
Is there something that's the most common cause of crashes when it happens, or is it really so varied to the point that every time we have a crash issue that it's literally something different every time?
About the really common denominator to all of this is what you're doing when you code it, and then somebody else uses it later on and uses it in a way that you're not really expecting, and all of a sudden then all of your assumptions, pretty much are shot to hell, and just weird things start to happen, and then you have to figure out, well, what's this weird thing? It may look like it's something in the UI, but it's really something all the way down in the renderer, or even worse in the AI code, or something really weird that's unrelated. It could be a crapshoot really to figure out what's going on.
Jay Jordog, something like that, has a question related to all this. He says, how hard is it to make game code into a functional game? I guess he's talking about, when you say, I want to program this, how hard is it to make it actually show up in the game? And how many times did you have to go back and rewrite or fix sections of code, which is directly related to what you were just talking about there?
We've had to do it a fair bit. I mean, writing code is much, much easier than reading code, like in the long run. And so eventually you get
reading somebody else's code.
Even reading your own code a month later, or a year later even.
Or even days later.
Yes, sometimes, depending upon how drunk
you are as you're doing it.
Let me ask you,
what is this?
Let me ask you guys both this question on the spot here. Do you properly comment your code?
Absolutely.
Yes.
It's a work of art.
Yeah.
I stand by that.
More comments and code sometimes if it needs to be.
Yeah. Let's get to some SOCOM questions here. X Factor 0693 says, will enemies in single player be continuously respawning, or will it be a specific number of them in each level?
For at least the single player stuff, definitely. As far as I know, as far as I've seen in the playtests that I've been in, it's strictly a matter of we have a fixed number of enemies in the map, because you don't want to have this infinite respawn. That just starts to break reality at some point, because, you know, until you cross this magical line, enemies just keep on showing up. No, it doesn't work like that. So it is a fixed number of enemies per map.
And more importantly, not only is the problem with reality broken, we also have that continued frustration element where if you reach a particular area where you are basically pinned down because the number of enemies keeps respawning over and over again, it can grow frustrating and bothersome, and that takes you out of the whole fun experience. Kevin89 wants to know if you can tell us when you're going to start talking about SOCOM multiplayer. Will we get information before 2011, or will we reveal the multiplayer info in a month or two before release? I'll take this one because I always do. We think that you're probably going to get some information before the end of the year.
Sometime around then is what we're hoping to do.
Right now, it's all about when everyone is prepared to discuss everything. And what I mean by everyone is there's a lot of factors involved. There's Zipper itself right here. You know, everyone here that when we are ready to talk about multiplayer, plus Sony, and not only Sony America, but Sony Europe and all the other territories that are involved. And then you also have what elements of multiplayer are we going to talk about? And when you do want to talk about these elements, how are they going to be revealed? Is it everyone going to get the information at once? Is it going to be some part of an exclusive media story? These are all things that are in the middle of being figured out right now.
And that is the key, is they are in the middle of being figured out. So we, at least internally, should have a better idea about when we're going to tell you soon. Not that we'll tell you when we're going to tell you. Maybe not. Anyway, but
generally though, I mean, you ask us as a development team, we want to tell everybody everything immediately. That's just the way that we are, because everyone here is proud of what they do and they want to say, "Hey, check this out." But it's still the continued answer of hang in there, but we do think that you will get some modicum of information before the year is over.
Yeah. Let's get on to some mag questions here. Red Kool-Aid has a pretty interesting one. It would mark a pretty big change to the way that mag is played, but he wants to know if we will ever see a no respawn game type for mag like we have with SOCOM, where you would start the game and when you're dead, and you got to wait till everybody's, the round is over and then you try it again. He's saying 8 versus 8 all the way up to maybe 128 versus 128 people games, short round times, anything like that. Well,
a no respawn game really isn't on the table. That's just a core element of the game and would be, a massive undertaking to change. But, we've liked the ideas of other game types like the 8 versus 8 and, so on, but we just have to wait and see.
Yeah. The short round, not the Indiana Jones character, but the idea of Dr. Jones, the idea of the short rounds is actually something we brought up to the community itself several months ago when we asked them if we wanted to increase or decrease the amount of time that was associated for domination times, which... and overwhelmingly, and by far, people wanted us to leave domination times alone, which is at half an hour. So all the indications were that the core players, for the most part, seemed to like the longer gameplay times.
That was for domination, though. So it'd be interesting to see what would happen with like suppression or something like those.
Suppression, if you made suppression any shorter, though, it'd be a blink of an eye.
Yeah.
Because suppression is our shortest game mode by far. So I think that if you made that even shorter, you had something to add, Chris?
I was just wiping my nose, but sure. Honestly, like a year before we shipped, I was talking to Scott Rudy about all these ideas, and there's so many things that we can do with mag that I just really hope we can do it someday. Just even things like capture the flag or just deathmatch or just other more common things as well. Hopefully someday we can work on that. We'll just have to see.
Man Under the Mask wants to know if you will release heavy armor that comes with the interdiction pack as a separate download. Or maybe the 9 new weapons that are coming out with the Escalation DLC pack on their own, if these will ever be available by themselves. I know you guys haven't heard whether or not that's happening. As far as we are aware right now, they're always going to stay part of the bundle.
Yeah.
And they will not be available separately. And the reason is because, you get too granular with some of these things. I think that you lose impact on others, so it's it's kind of cool that when you buy the Escalation DLC pack or the Interdiction DLC pack, that you're getting more than just maps in a game type.
Right.
You're getting some extra stuff with it. So right now our plan is to keep them together.
Yep. Clappe wants to know if we will ever be able to freely control flying vehicles, things like helicopters, bombers, flying UAVs, etc.
It's possible, but that would be a huge undertaking again. Right now the choppers and UAVs and everything are just kind of animated in, and turning that into player control isn't trivial. And then now you're going to be able to, have to worry about streaming problems and just control problems and all kinds of issues. So that is definitely doable, but, we'll just have to see if there's enough push for that.
There are no plans right now on our big list of to-do features to make that happen yet right now, though.
As an aside, a question that comes up a lot is why not allow them to be pilotable from the beginning? And the reason, there's actually a specific reason behind that, and it's because the focus of MAG was to actually be an infantry-based game, so that a lot of the action was taking place on the ground with army versus army, and not to get too involved in all these different vehicle types. So that's why you do have some vehicles on the ground, but not a huge assortment of them, and why you can't fly vehicles, because we wanted it to be a very close infantry-based battle game.
And also, from a design perspective, I know one of the things we were trying for a long time was to make sure that you had some amount of sightline, because MAG is a very open world. I mean, it's very spread out. There's not a lot of, things that get in the way between you and your objective. So you had to make sure that you had some amount of visibility off into the future, but you also didn't want to be able to pretty much snipe the targets from anywhere on the map. You had to make sure that it was very carefully balanced so that the helicopters and all that stuff didn't become too powerful and pretty much unbalance the game.
Inkoyami wants to know if we'll ever see unconventional weapons like an unmanned sentry or flamethrowers, things of that nature.
It's on the big list. A lot of these kinds of things, but there's no green light on it right now. But yeah, there's a lot of cool things that we've either started working on or have talked about. Yeah, it's possible.
We actually were working on it's never going to make it into the game, so I'm going to bring it up. We were working on this unmanned sentry type thing for a while.
Right.
That was actually pretty cool. It was an interesting little side vehicle thing that you could kind of control and go out, and you could deploy ammo, and you could shoot. It had its own little gun. The problem with it, though, is as cool as it was, it didn't feel like it was part of the game. Kind of felt like you're playing a different game other than MAG. And while we could do, imagination's the limit when you have a talented staff like we have at Zipper. And we could really do any number of things, but if you introduce the wrong element to the game, it doesn't really feel like you're playing the same game that you signed up for. So in that respect, you also have to kind of remain mindful of what would take you out of the experience of what makes the game the game.
Right, which is why we're still thinking about whether the alien invasion at the end of SOCOM 4 really fits.
Right. I know, we already got rid of the Loch Ness battle, which I'm a little disappointed in, but whatever.
Benjamin86 wants to know if it would be possible to release a map tool pack compatible with MAG, something sort of like what would they have with Unreal Tournament 3, where you can make maps on the PC or something and then import them into the game.
It probably wouldn't happen anytime in the near future. One of the things that we've kind of worked with the level editors, it doesn't look like, a Microsoft Word or, a really professionally designed tool. Not that we've not done a really good job on it, but, it is one of those things of once you start releasing things to the public, you have to then really stamp out all the crash bugs. You have to stamp out all those things and make sure everything works intuitively for somebody who's not familiar with the system.
This is kind of the same reason we talk about people say, why don't you just release the E3 demo of SOCOM 4 on the PlayStation Network, when we say, well, there's one thing between being at a trade show and having somebody there watching you play it and helping you with it, versus giving it to somebody to do on their own at their own time, having to polish it to hell and, make sure there's no crashes whatsoever. All of these things, different beast altogether.
Right. And then you have to worry about, hey, you've got really big levels. How are you going to worry about, getting a ton of assets in there, like all the spawn points and making sure everything works the way you want it to? It's a huge undertaking as far as that's concerned. I mean, I know the community has done a lot of great things with UT3 and a whole bunch of the other source engines and Forge for Halo and all those things, but it is a huge undertaking, and especially when you're trying to get stuff onto like a PlayStation 3, it gets a little bit funny, and like, how do you stream that data to somebody else? Because, hey, with MAG, you have it on the disk. Now you've got to push all that data through the network to somebody else and have a repository for it. It gets really complicated really fast, and it's something that we never really intended on doing from the very get-go.
And let's not forget about the most problematic scenario with that is even if you could figure out a way to get all of this stuff to people, MAG is such a game that's so reliant on specific player counts for playing modes. If you had a whole bunch of alternatives for these different modes for people to play, you'd be splitting the audience to such small groups that spinning up a game would be close to impossible.
Right.
And that's the key. Field 707 wants to know if we'll ever be able to dual wield weapons and like a needler. And will we ever see new shotguns or pistols?
You will not be able to dual wield, but on the short list we do have shotguns and pistols and SMGs. But it's memory bound right now, and we just need a green light. But that would be a pretty exciting update right there. I think.
So no dual wield, but maybe to new weapons at some point
That's
in the
right.
future. We'll see how that goes.
And just to expand on memory bound, in case they've never heard the show before or aren't quite familiar with what memory bound means, that's essentially that we have to make sure there's enough memory in the game to support the additional weapons.
That's right. You're having new animations, new possibly effects, new textures, new geometry. All those things need to fit somewhere. So we either have to get rid of something in the game, or wave a magic wand, or something like that. It's definitely doable.
Seed Rat wants to know, I think comes from the Wasteland, will there be new maps for domination, acquisition, and or sabotage coming anytime in the near future?
That really depends on how well MAG does now that it's a greatest hit.
Right.
Combined with how much interest there is in our new DLC pack when that comes out in our existing
Move support
DLC.
if that bolsters it, yeah.
If our audience continues to grow and to build, and there's enough support for it to keep us going to be able to add on these new things, we will continue to add new things. And it's really dependent at this point now as we approach MAG's 1-year anniversary, how well the game continues to support itself that dictates how well we can support the game.
Right.
The Black Omen wants to know if during happy hour, if I log out of the PlayStation Network or even just out of MAG, can it be made so that the clock stops? Because at the moment it goes on, and I can't always play for a full hour.
Yeah, that's actually a design decision. So, I mean, we could change it, but that's just how it is right now. I definitely feel the pain, but the whole point was that it is a happy hour. Like, you can't go to a bar and say, "Hey, I'm going to come back in a little while. Have it still be happy hour."
Yeah,
that's just kind of how it is.
But it's not as soon as you log in that it kicks off. The happy hour timer doesn't start until you start your first game. So if you are just checking out menus or whatever, you don't have to worry about your timer being used. Otherwise. Yeah, I think the way it's set up now makes sense. Otherwise, I think you're leaving yourself open, and by yourself, I actually mean us at Zipper. You're leaving yourself in the game open to exploiting the system if we pause it every single time that you go off to do something other than play the game.
NSW Red Knight wants to know if it would be safe to assume that MAG 3.0 were to ever come. Would that include 3D support? Since a lot of games, on the PS3, are big on pushing 3D.
Wow, 3.0.
Yeah.
We just put out 2.01.
Everyone's desires are infinite. I think it's safe to say that we would, if we have the chance to do it, we would love to go one level further and just keep on pushing MAG as far as we could ever want to do it. As far as what a 3.0 would look like at this point, we don't really have a good concept of where we're going yet. So again, it's a matter of how do we have the the money to really support this thing indefinitely coming up with new content and new features for it. So we'll have to see.
Yep.
This next question is one that's constantly brought up, especially post 2.0, because this is where it was implemented, and it comes from Leathery. Well, why can't we bank our respec points anymore?
Well, that was just a design decision. You just want to be able to, I guess, kind of go through the content. Honestly, I kind of agree. I don't like it, but we're constantly keeping an eye on it. So, I mean, you very well could be seeing some adjustments to the points total, or
yeah, kind of the overall thing on this was that we didn't want people playing a game and then having enough respec points to go ahead and do it, completely changing their character, playing a game, completely changing their character again. We want people to be invested in it and to feel like they're making decisions that are going to stick with them at least for a few games until they earn the points back up again. And your decisions are more important is the overall goal.
Yeah, and we're definitely talking about some things that could make it a little more polished. Like confirming your choices so you don't get screwed with some skill you didn't want, or just streamlining the whole process, things like that. So it, hopefully will be better in the future.
Yeah, because the problem you run into with removing it or making it so you can do it indefinitely, essentially, is that then why even have a respec system at all? And so you need to have it. You need to give it some sort of limit. Otherwise, you're negating the whole reason for having it.
Right.
So as long as we have a system, we are going to put limits as to how you can use that. Otherwise, there's no need to have it.
Right. And with that brings us time to the zip tip.
For those of you that are not familiar with the Zip Tip, it is our weekly insight into the minds of our guest, or in this case, guests, where each person that we interview gives us an idea of some kind of life lesson.
Some way to make your life better, like
That's
all
right.
those things you see on TV.
It could be something about how to eat better, how to cook better, or it could just be how to play a video game that we made better. It's really up to
The one
them.
thing that you cannot say, banned in all shows for here henceforth, is to play MAG as a team.
That's right.
You cannot
'cause that's
say
what
play
everyone
MAG
always
as a-
says.
What about using a headset?
That's fine. You can totally
Use a
do
headset. That's great. Chris, that's your tip?
No, it's not.
Okay.
I actually
that was a
have,
fake.
There's a hypothetical.
Freebie.
Yes.
What's your tip?
I have a tip for dads and moms that want to try to play games because it's very hard to find the time. For me, you just stay up late and play when everyone's in bed, and then don't show that you're tired in the morning.
That's lots of coffee.
That's right. Fake it. As soon as they see that those late nights are impacting your day, it's over. So suck it up.
So invest in a coffee maker.
That's right. Or in my case, cases of Red Bull.
There you go. David, how about your tip?
My tip goes to all the would-be wanna game makers out there. We actually talked about this at one point, and they stole my thunder, so I'm going to say it again, though. There's really kind of a few things that really help you getting into the game industry. Education, experience, and passion. You really need two of the three, and you
Or
really...
EAP. That's EAP.
Eep. Yeah.
Yes, you need education, experience, and passion. You really need two of the three, but really keep passion as one of those. So stay in school, if you can, or if you find something, if you happen to get lucky, right out of high school or halfway through college, that's great. That'll certainly substitute you. But until you get that experience, stay in school if you want to do this because it's a lot of fun.
Excellent tip. I also like to say it's a good thing you didn't say passion first, because then it'd be a totally different, totally different thing.
Make sure you pee.
That's right. It's time to say goodbye.
Yep. As always, you can find us on Twitter and Facebook. You can find us at twitter.com/Zipper and facebook.com/SOCOM or facebook.com/Zipper Interactive.
If you have a question for us or a comment about this or any other podcast, you can always send us an email to zipline@zipperint.com, or you can visit the official podcast threads that we post on both the SOCOM and MAG forums. You just go to the blog discussion sections of those forums and you'll find that topic. Our next podcast,
yes,
will be on October the 29th. It's our special Halloween episode, which means it'll be it's scary. Ooh, and the reason it's scary is because we don't know what we're going to do on it yet.
Yeah.
But it'll be before Halloween.
Anyway, David and Chris, thank you guys for coming by the show. It's a pleasure having you guys on here.
Thank you. It was fun.
Yep. And I think that brings us to the end of it. So we will see you guys in 2 weeks. Bye.
See ya.